Hey everybody, good morning. Excuse my appearance. I woke up early as hell today. Just trying to get some workout done. Let's go back to what we're here for. We're going to talk about the first energy system that we use, and the most intense one, which is your phosphgen system, meaning your phosphocreatine converted to ATP. ATP gets broken down into these other components. Now this component can get very scientific. I'm going to try not to, because it's not to impress you guys. It's mostly to give you guys information. Now, ATP, we carry a bit of ATP in stored, typically about 80 grams to 100 grams in our body, depending on the individual. And we constantly still need that, and we use it very fast. How is it possible that we keep getting more during our exercise if we use it rapidly? And that's where the other systems come into play. So the first one that comes into play is your phosphocreatine. Meaning, we're going to show you how it works and how it's related to exercise. So ATP, I'm going to give you guys a little drawing and an idea. Green for ATP. So this is just a representation of ATP. So don't think of it as an actual number. But typically we have a nice storage of ATP, and then it starts picking up, and then it kind of slowly starts plateauing. That's typically what happens with ATP. Now, as for creatine phosphate, which is your black, kind of comes into play, shoots up really fast, okay, and then it kind of sinks down to empty. Now, as for the timing of this energy system, it gets used very fast. It takes 8 seconds to use it. That's why after a 40-yard dash or something of the sort, even 5 seconds into it, you start feeling like dirt. That's because now you start going into more of the glycolysis system, your carbs. So, when it comes to this system, it has to be very fast, very intense. That's why it's utilized. Now, as we get more adapted, okay, as we get better adapted, we could probably spread this a little bit further down. Alright? That's the nice thing about it. What I mean by further down is that you start training specifically for it. Let me erase this, I messed up. You start training a little bit more, and we could probably store more creatine phosphate or phosphate creatine. What happens when that occurs? Well, if that were to happen and you had more creatine, right, in your body from all the training, it'll look more steadily. So it'll look like a water base. What does that mean? Well, it means that your ATP, you'd probably have more ATP for those high intensity exercises. I mean massive intensity. So we're talking about more power. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, you like power. So with the exercises coming up, they're mostly examples of what this system is being used for. And you have several different components. So if you're a sprinter, if you're a baseball player, if you're football, and you need power, or any other sport that needs power, this might be the system you want to work on mostly. And we'll keep talking about this throughout this video as I start adding more clips. Be right back. All right, stay tuned. So in this particular exercise, we're trying to do maximal force as fast as we can. Now typically this is one way that phosphocreatine gets utilized to be converted into ATP. Now this is one method of actually training. The usual regimen for a training style like this is still it's usually 6 repetitions that we want to go max. Now, you could probably go higher, you could probably go lower. On the next exercise, you'll see the same thing, just a little bit faster than usual. Alright guys, on the next 2 exercises I'm going to show you, we're going to be emphasizing on speed power, which is basically you trying to recruit as fast as you can your muscle fibers. Now, this is typically one way of training that creatine system and that ATP system. There's also 1 rep max. In this case, we're trying to go from an eccentric force to an ancillary force to a concentric force as fast as we can to get those muscles jumps firing really quickly. This is one way of training that system. Alright, now that you kind of saw the clips and how power is derived and what type of power is out there and how we use creatine phosphate for ATP or phosphocreatine, you can pronounce it whichever way you see, but there's a few ways of actually increasing the storage, and it's mostly through training regimens. And a lot of times you have separate types of training regimens, mostly dedicated to the individual's sport. So if you are trying to do a longer lasting duration of a high intensity, well, probably adding a little bit more volume to your high intensity routine would work. But the problem is you still need an adequate amount of recovery. If you don't give yourself enough recovery, then you're going to be using more on the anaerobic system. So when it comes back into this creatine phosphate and ATP stuff, there's other things that happen in there, like the breakdown of AMPA, the breakdown of PI, the increase of ADP, the increase of all these other things. I'm not going to go into that stuff. But in general, a normal basic strength routine for this system is mostly repetitions of 6 or less, meaning 1 set of 6, 2 sets of 6, 3 sets of 6, 4 sets of 6, but you have adequate rest in between, and we're talking about 5, 8 minutes, because the problem is that this system takes a long time to recharge. That's the issue when it comes to the system. It's minute, it's very fast in use, but it takes a long time. For whatever you use in 5 to 8 seconds, well, it's going to take you 5 minutes just to replenish 80% of that. That's the numbers that they throw out there. So imagine, only 80% of what you originally started with, you're going to tank out fast. Now, back to the training wise. Typically, high volumes of intensity with low repetitions is ideal. Now, there are other methodologies out there. I'm not saying this one's perfect, but it is the general guidelines, what we use for increasing the phosphagen system. Now, when it comes for all these different things that we talked about during my videos, it gets complicated. Again, even worse. If you have more specific questions that you want to talk about, go ahead and write it down in the comments. And again, we'll come back and we'll answer it as best we can. But it's very difficult at one point. So we have to take consideration of what you're doing now, what your background is, what you're planning to do, whether it is overall maximal power or force production, or even enduring longer durations of high intensity. So you have those 2 spectrums. But again, it's dictated on you individually and your goal. So please feel free, write a comment below. I'll send you my email if you need it, and we'll talk more about it. Thanks, and stay tuned for the next energy system next week, which is going to be your anaerobic glycolysis. You got it.